The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You've always got time for short time.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine. The one and only Chael Sonnen. And you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
Here in New Brighton, Minnesota. This is not the studio. This is not the speakeasy. My guest today is my wife, who is already giggling as she's been bugging me to, hey, why don't I come on your show? You should have me on your show. Let's do that. Let's do that. So finally, after our trip home from Virginia, we're sitting down before we eat ice cream and watch Survivor, things married couples do, for a little 20 questions. Abby, hello. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Jason.
It's weird because we never actually call each other by our names. It's like, hey, babe, when's dinner? And yeah, I don't even know what you call me besides names. So this is it's interesting because I'm trying to figure out all these things. You know, when you first get married and your wife's really happy and she's like, let's play 20 questions. I hate playing 20 questions. Yes. I don't like playing 20 questions.
Wait a sec. Back up to when you first get married and you're really happy.
Okay, sorry. Okay. When you were playing these happy, fun games, we're still greatly happy.
Because we didn't have kids, so we had time to play silly, fun games.
Yeah. See, normally now we're in the car on the plane. It's not like we don't have time to talk to each other. This is why we have to manufacture a whole podcast so we can actually have a conversation. This is actually not bad for marital wedded bliss, so to speak. So Abby and I have been married for, let's see, what year is it? 2016. So 6 years.
Yes.
And you see, now you had to do the checking. And Abby didn't know anything about wrestling beforehand. So,
well, I knew a little bit
about wrestling. You're from Princeton, Minnesota. And one of our questions, I'll just start with one of the questions now. Who is the most famous wrestler from Princeton, Minnesota?
Bob Backlund.
Why is Bob Backlund famous? There's two reasons.
One, he was a wrestler in the WWE.
Yes.
In the 70s and 80s.
Yes, very good. And even actually until he still makes appearances.
Oh.
Yeah. So then again, you don't retire when you're a professional wrestler, really. So, but anyway. And what was the other? College national champion at North Dakota State. So
of course, yes.
Yeah, there's a real tie into. I'm not going to say Abby is in 6 years of us being married and 7 years of us being together. She's absorbed all of my 20 plus years of wrestling experience, so to speak. Although her wrestling career on the mat, slightly worse than mine.
I didn't have a wrestling career.
Exactly. So, it's one of these things where when you get married, and my passion's been wrestling and journalism, and it's basically been one-sided, but just talk about your introduction to this world of wrestling and how much it's now just kind of not just controlling your home conversations with me, but our travel and family time.
So let's be clear. When I first met you, my experience with wrestling was limited to 2 dates I went on in high school with the heavyweight on our team. I won't even say his name.
Because you probably can't remember.
Of course.
Wait, it's a small town. You guys have Princeton, Minnesota has 2 stoplights.
Yeah.
Although the heavyweight thing, this is the first I've heard of that. I thought it was a 135 pounder. So, I feel good there.
Yeah. I was a 3-sport high school athlete and a D3 softball player for a while. So sports are not new to me. I always thought I'd marry somebody who was somewhat athletic, but
yeah, you failed on that respect.
I did get somebody who's
somewhat athletic. I tried to run the Twin Cities Marathon, got about halfway through it. So that's somewhat athletic.
I mean, I don't even think you have to be athletic to run, but you have to be somewhat coordinated, I guess. Anyhow, so I ended up with somebody who's in the world of sports, maybe not as an athlete, but as a journalist. And I think that's what I see more. I see more of your journalistic side, not the wrestling side of it. The wrestling is
I'm not coming home. I'm not teaching Preston, like our nephew who's 16 or he's got a driver's license. I'm not teaching the nieces and nephews I inherited wrestling moves by any means. No. Maybe there was that one Thanksgiving I did throw Preston in a cradle, which he didn't seem to like too much.
Sure. Yeah.
But
I mean, nobody likes a surprise wrestling move after you've had a Thanksgiving dinner.
That's very true.
To be clear.
Especially me. So we were talking about me. Now, it's my show. So we get into this. Now, when we were dating, we first started. First of all, it's just question number like 1A. It's no secret, but we met through eHarmony.
Yes,
and
we did.
Our first date was March 25th, 2009. 3 days after the NCAA championships in St. Louis. And that was the year Kyle Klingman and I were doing Wrestling 411. And we were driving from JUCOs to D3s to D2s to D1. So our first date is after wrestling season. It's totally done. And you didn't experience the crazy March other than the emails we traded. So I'm on the road for the month. So you didn't know what to expect with this wrestling stuff.
That's true. That was actually one of my questions for you. What was the first wrestling trip that you went on after we started dating? After we started dating, so March, it would have, well, what do you classify dating? Because we went on 2 dates before the first trip because I was leaving for a trip on our second date. Was that a wrestling trip? That was for high school nationals. Oh, well, then I guess that's it. So second date. Yeah. At a Perkins in Shoreview, Minnesota. Is it technically Shoreview? Yeah, it is. Yeah, because I didn't really know what Perkins really was until I moved out here. I think there was one time in Florida, Frank Lapoli bought me some Perkins in Orlando. And you know Frank. I know Frank. And all his phone calls. So we go through that. And then Abby does some 6 weeks of volunteer work. She was in between moving from one job to the other and had set it up perfectly. Can you say that in a nicer way? I mean, it sounds like I was just unemployed. No, I'm saying you set it up perfectly. You was taking a position at a new company, leaving another company, but had set it up perfectly where she had her whole entire summer to herself while getting money on both ends. So that was like super smart. So she decides to go to South Africa. Now, while we're dating, and this is when Wrestling 411 was still going, Kyle and I were doing 2 shows a week. There really wasn't a whole lot of work after the wrestling season. So we spent a lot of time. And she kept talking. I was like, yeah, I'm coming to South Africa. You should go. I'm like, yeah, that's totally not going to fly. This company is tanking. I saw it then, but it was. And all of a sudden, she doesn't deal with Fargo. She doesn't deal with some of these other trips that come up and all the drama that goes around it. And yeah, by the time we went to South Africa, which you totally convinced me to go, I was like, okay, we pretty much know this is like the real deal. Mm-hmm. Then you get introduced to your first wrestling season, not through that, but also being hired at USA Wrestling right away. So that had to be difficult. Yeah. So I think in the past 5 minutes, you've summed up a big difference between us. If there is something that can be said in 10 words, I'll say it in 8 and you'll say it in 800. This is why I have 14 different podcasts. Yeah, because you need that many to get all of your words out. So yeah, the moral of the story is we started dating after the wrestling season. I was gone during the summer events. So no Fargo. Totally missed out on the Fargo experience. And was already head over heels in love with you by... Which sounds really weird for people to say on my podcast. I love this. This was a good idea for me. So I was head over heels in love with you by the time you got serious about moving to Colorado and covering wrestling full time with USA Wrestling. So that's how I guess we came here. I didn't know what I was getting into. And then we moved to Colorado. But we were married in May. But for the first year, you were super commuting between Memphis or Millington, Tennessee, technically, the Twin Cities and Colorado Springs. So for I got to see my wife 7 days a month. So I'm working at USA Wrestling. I'm like, all right, I'm 30 years old and I'm basically still living in my own townhouse with nobody there, just binging Lost on weekends. But then you finally got a job in Colorado and yeah, a lot of wrestling. A lot of wrestling. So let's tell your fans what was going on. I worked for a consulting firm, right? So I flew out every week, Monday to Thursday. Sometimes Red Eyes out of Denver. Yep. Red Eyes out of Denver. You spent a lot of time driving on 470. E470, the worst
highway on the planet. Evil company owns that truck.
Don't even talk about the tolls that were sent to collections, but
which
whatever.
we never got.
That's true. Wasn't our fault.
Evil company. By the way, that noise you might hear, it's the dishwasher.
Yeah, don't mind the dishwasher, the baby monitor, the dryer. We're at our house, folks.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Things that aren't on. There is no kegerator in this house. I do not have my speakeasy built as yet. So we're in Colorado.
Yes. So I was working for a consulting company. I was gone most of the time, home on weekends, but Jason was traveling 30 to 40 weekends a year at that point. So we really saw each other, from one airplane to another, could wave at each other.
Our status was nasty cool at the time. You were you were platinum on Delta?
I had so much status, I got you upgraded with me.
Yeah. And then I was getting status on United. So we were pretty much set when we wanted to fly. Then, So long story short, then we decided I don't know if it was like an okay. How do you say you decided to have children? Because it was one of these things like, okay, we're having kids. It wasn't like, we're going to have kids. Let's have kids.
It's not like the stork brings them. You just decide one day. I mean, you just kind of decide
No, you wake up and surprise your husband. That's exactly how you decide to have a baby. Without getting too personal. But there's people sitting there listening and going, yep, that's exactly what happened to me.
Was there a question in there?
Well, we don't decide. We were going to have kids.
Right. We decided we wanted a family, right?
Right. So then we have kids, and Lucy had some medical issues, and I'm not going to go through those crazily because I've described those on the show and in the blogs in the past. But long story short, that if you've been listening to the show with any longevity, that Lucy was our oldest daughter was in the NICU in Denver for 4 months. She had a couple medical procedures that were of an issue, or medical issues that were taken care of. Now she's a happy 4-year-old and
happy, healthy
4-year-old. Doesn't really care for doesn't like college wrestling very much.
Well, that buzzer's a bit loud for her.
Yeah, the buzzer. We'll explain that in a little bit.
She likes the popcorn.
Of course. Yeah. We went back to Virginia and she watched her second ever college wrestling event. The first was the Virginia Duels when she was 8 months old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we decide that as much as I loved working at USA Wrestling, how awesome Colorado Springs was to live, come back to Minnesota where you're from, family support system. Because if I'm going to cover wrestling, I'm going to cover wrestling. And then there's the Open Mat Amateur Wrestling News thing that came and went. And then now Mat Talk was reborn. Mm-hmm. So once we've got that out of the way, now we have 2 kids, Lucy London, Ruby Rio. And now, as I was saying, the things that married people do when they can talk is these car games called 20 questions. And I never care for 20 questions much. So for you people and you listening to wonder what the heck, if you've ever wondered, what does JB's wife have to deal with? And I just refer to myself in third person as initials. So you were actually the second JB wife to appear on the Short Time Wrestling podcast. Who was the first JB wife?
Lauren Burrows.
Yes. So yeah. He got first in that one too. How does that happen? It's my own show.
I know, right?
So I've got a list of questions that are about wrestling and my involvement in wrestling. Abby has a few as well. Actually, why don't we start with yours?
Okay.
Because I'm curious on where this is going to go.
All right. So my first question is, what percentage of our dinner conversations do you think are spent talking about wrestling?
About wrestling or wrestling and podcasting?
We'll go for the combo. Wrestling and podcasting.
Combo, 96%. Wrestling, 90 of that 96%.
Okay. And the other 4% we spend talking about?
Whatever you do in HR, whatever job you have.
No, we spend talking about the children.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So.
Okay. I talk a lot about wrestling and podcasting, even at the table.
Yes.
Where do you work again? No, I'm just.
Very funny. Second question. Do you want our kids to follow in your footsteps? And if so, what does that look like to you?
I thought about this actually when I was announcing the match, and we're just coming back from, this is the part where it takes you 8 words to say something. I have to say 800. Mm-hmm. Coming back from Virginia, where I announced the ODU Missouri match, and Lucy was there behind me, and we're driving to the airport. I remember thinking, what if Lucy wants to help me announce these matches someday. Like if she's like a spotter and then like starts handing me stuff, like, you know, helping out. And then next thing you know, she's old enough and wants to start announcing, you know, results and things like that. And that would be cool. I don't think I want to have, I don't know if, you know, we know with Lucy's medical condition, she can't wrestle. She can't do contact sports with blows to the head. The little one, I don't know, if you want to follow my footsteps as a wrestler, that's a pretty short career. It'd be cool. You know, Mike Finn's daughters followed him a little bit in journalism, so that was cool. It'd be cool to share something with them in that regard. I don't necessarily think that they need to follow in my footsteps. I just think that to have them appreciate something I appreciate would be pretty much all I would ask for.
Okay. Cool.
Next question.
If you could take me on the ultimate wrestling trip, where would it be and what would we do?
Ultimate wrestling trip. The thing is, the problem with an ultimate wrestling trip is it's got to be one I'm not working.
Let's assume you're a spectator. So suspend reality for a minute because we know that's never going to happen.
I haven't been a spectator at a wrestling event since the first event that I'm actually going to, that's a question. It'd probably be an Olympic Games. Like hypothetically, granted, I'm trying to work Tokyo in 2020, but that would be a situation. Okay, we're going to go to Tokyo and explore Asia and then watch Olympic wrestling and watch the Americans win gold medals and stuff. So like an Olympic type experience that captures like the culture of the country. Or I could just take it to Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and we just call it a safe. No.
And I'd really experience the culture of something.
Well, let's just say you'd experience the culture of questionable bathrooms in Uzbekistan, but I'd probably have to base it around in either an Olympic experience or maybe like the Commonwealth Games or for countries that are like, you know, the Commonwealths of Great Britain and former under their kind of rule. And they've been in some cool places. I know we've talked about going to Scotland. South Africa has, the Republic of South Africa is a Commonwealth Games participant. So if there was like a wrestling trip, we could go to South Africa again. That would also be cool.
Sounds amazing. Let's do that.
You hear that? Yosip, I know you're listening. The guy that runs Commonwealth Games Wrestling listens to the show. So hint, nudge, nudge. What else do you got?
You have a few singlets. I've seen them in the closet. Any chance of you getting back on the mat ever?
No. Not as a competitor ever. I don't want to do it to compete. I want to do it to lose weight. And Jake Clark and I have kind of had a discussion about if I can come down and make weight at 97 kilos, that would be the only reason I would ever do it. Is just to get down to 213 pounds.
So you're saying there's a chance?
The actual, no, I'm going to step on the mat, forfeit, and be done. Take my second place medal and go home. Hopefully there's only one other guy in the weight class. No, but I wasn't good as a wrestler anyway. I like the idea of being able to work out in wrestling, but I just went to that one practice in January and just like pummeled and played soccer, and I was dead to the world for a week and a half. Mm-hmm. I don't actually want to compete with people that know what they're doing and still think that they've got it against a guy that knows he doesn't have it and doesn't really know what he's doing. Although I think I would like to like suspend time and wrestle myself from high school to see how much more I know just by being around it for so much for the last 20 years. Because there's stuff now that, I mean, I see kids do that I'm like, oh yeah, you sit there, you do boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, whoa, I totally saw that happen. But I always joke that the last time I put on a singlet was the last time I put on a singlet until last Halloween, in which we have Nick Slack to thank for that. New Patreon contributor to the show, by the way. So
shout out to Nick.
Also Samantha Burgoyne for jumping in, and her husband Drew came out a couple weeks ago. Had a good time at Adagio's Pizza Factory right down the street. Mm-hmm. Just thanking the wrestling people. Next question.
All right.
Is this how many questions do you have?
This is my last question, so actually.
You have 5. I have like 40 for her, by the way, because this show isn't about her asking me questions. This show is actually about her.
But this helps you get to know the real JB.
You never call me JB, ever.
You said you were talking about yourself in third person, so I was hopping on the train.
Yeah. I guess I get JB a lot. Anyway. Mr. Burrows is JB number one when it's journalism. When it's wrestling, you can take JB number one. We've had this discussion before. Continue.
Okay, so last question. Many people don't realize that you have an announcer voice and like a regular voice. Can you give us a statement in both your regular voice and your announcer voice? Because you know I love your announcer voice.
Well, I have 3 voices. So I'd say this is kind of like my conversational, like normal tone. Then there's the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Jason Bryant here with you, episode 292. And then there is what my good friend, the best man at my wedding, one of the 3 best men. I didn't have best man, groomsman. I had 3 best men. But Nate, who has made appearances on shows, I've actually been on shows with him. He calls this Twinkie announcer voice. And yes, those of you that know what that means, the first part of it, at least I'll let you go with that. But is the over-the-top radio PA announcer voice. Be like, Saturday night, we're going down to Madison Square Garden to check out Arena Cross, Hampton Coliseum. You know, it's like over-the-top, like, yes, just join us for $20. You can meet, you know, all these just
like the Micro Machine guy. That's what it makes me think of.
No, I think it's more like the guy that's like Hampton Coliseum, Bigfoot. You know, it's like monkey-driven rocket-powered jet cars. Kids meet SpongeBob SquarePants. Fans meet the Nitro Girls. $5 buys a seat, but you'll only need the edge. Plus ticket title, license, ticket service charge. That's Twinkie announcer voice.
I love it. That's all I got, babe.
Okay.
You're
okay.
up.
So now, this is the part where this isn't like questions. This is like more or less an interrogation of what you know about wrestling based on our life together so far. So some of these we've never talked about before. So I do have the answers.
So you're going to see how much I'm paying attention during the 90% of dinner conversations?
Yes, because I'm a terrible listener. That means you have to make up for it.
Yeah.
I have to listen to all these interviews all the time. I can't possibly spend time listening to you.
Really?
I'm just joking. So, question, I don't even have these numbered. Anyway, so let's start out with some easy ones. Who is my favorite wrestler of all time? There may or may not be a bobblehead of him in The Office.
Bruce Baumgartner?
Yes, that is correct.
All right.
Bonus point. What school is he the athletic director at?
Didn't he just get a job with USA Wrestling?
Well, that's a volunteer position, but he's the AD at a school that's known for plaid, and a mutual friend of ours named Tammy Tedesco may have gone to that school.
Somewhere in Pennsylvania?
Okay, Edinburgh. Okay.
Edinburgh.
Yeah. Okay. We don't really talk Edinburgh too much, so.
No.
But, okay. How many different countries have I visited for wrestling since we got married in 2010?
7?
Very close. 8. Russia, Turkey, England, Thailand, Hungary, Uzbekistan, Canada, and Brazil.
Would you believe I forgot about England?
Yeah.
It was a busy year for us.
Okay. Well, that's another question. Okay. What was the first ever wrestling match I took you to?
It was a college duel in Madison, Wisconsin.
Absolutely correct. Do you remember the teams?
I'm going to say Wisconsin versus ODU.
Yeah, that's actually correct. November 2009. How many consecutive years have I been going to Fargo?
16.
18.
18? It's a lot.
Okay. When I say the words scores and curate, what goes through your mind?
I'm going to bed.
Do you want to explain what that means?
Every night, Jason's favorite thing to do is to look at all the different wrestling matches that happened and curate and put them in his nerdy little database so he can keep track of everything that's going on.
You're totally blending two different actions. Oh. The scores go in the database.
Okay.
Curation is the daily newsletter that goes out
yes.
the next day. Mm-hmm. I guess I am curating the scores too, so you're kind of half right. What is my favorite ice cream flavor?
Cherry Garcia?
Yes. I would have also accepted anything that's Ben and Jerry's cheesecake or, well, pretty much anything.
Yeah.
All right. This one might catch some heat if you get these wrong. This is rapid fire. Who is the head wrestling coach at Iowa?
Tom Brands.
Who's the head wrestling coach at Penn State?
Kale.
Who's the head wrestling coach at Old Dominion?
Steve Martin.
Virginia Tech. No, that's Buena Vista. Remember, she doesn't live.
I really don't.
Kevin Dresser.
Kevin Dresser, yes. I know these names. I just don't know what schools
I'm
they
not
go
even going to
with.
ask you the last one.
No, ask me.
Oklahoma State.
We met him,
Yeah.
right? I don't know.
John Smith.
John Smith. I think of him in like an old economics or historian person, right? Same name. Anyways.
I really have a lot of work to do with you, don't I?
I know you do, honey.
Okay.
I try.
We've already asked the Bob Backlund question. Who is your favorite one of my wrestling friends that you've met? I have 3 options down.
Oh. I mean, one of my favorites is Nick Slack.
Okay.
Because he came to the house, he bought some chairs from our neighbors, hooked us up with some t-shirts. Mom likes him. Yeah, he's a good guy.
And then the whole singlet thing, that doesn't disqualify him from this?
No, because that's all you.
Yeah, and he was a national champ at Augsburg, so.
Of course, D3 all the way.
And he's a Minnesota native. So my other options would have been Pat Tossi or his wife Marissa, Kyle Klingman.
Oh, yeah, all good choices.
Or Tiffany Clark.
Oh, yeah, love them all.
Okay. Within 20, how many podcasts have I produced, edited, or distributed since we met in March of 2009?
Well, it feels like about 9,000.
That would be wrong.
I am going to go with 750.
The actual answer is, depending on when this gets released, is 1,090-ish.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, almost, you could have gone anywhere between 1,080 or 1,100.
This is not being scored, right?
No. I can score it.
No,
I can put that in my database, too. My nerdy little database. Who is your favorite Olympic wrestler?
Helen Maroulis.
Who is Lucy's favorite Olympic wrestler?
Helen Maroulis.
What wrestler have you heard me talk about the most? Of those 90% dinner conversations.
I mean, it, kind of changes with this cycle. You've talked about Jordan Burroughs a lot, of course. Kyle Dake. I feel like you've talked about him a lot for some reason. Jake Clark.
Well, yeah. How many pairs of wrestling shoes do I own?
2?
Correct. How many pairs of Jordan Burroughs shoes do I own?
4?
Yeah, 3 of the shoes and one pair of the wrestling shoes. Who is your favorite Minnesota wrestler?
Does Charlie Bush count?
Charlie Bush counts.
Yeah.
I would have also accepted Nick Slack or Jake Clark.
Nice.
Who's the coolest person you've gotten to meet through wrestling?
Dan Gable. Duh.
Okay. Tell me about your last conversation you had with Dan Gable.
I mean, the last conversation was about Dancing with the Stars, right?
And this wasn't you talking to Coach Gable about Dancing with the Stars. No. This was a conversation.
Yeah, we were sitting at dinner at the Greco-Roman Hall of Fame Awards. He was presenting on behalf of somebody who couldn't attend. It's at our table. I was talking to the lady next to me, also not a wrestling fan, about Ryan Lochte, of all people.
He sucks.
Whatever. And yeah, we just conversationally said, is he even still on Dancing with the Stars? And Mr. Gable pipes up, yeah, he sure is. And he's like, my wife watches it.
Do you remember my response? There were no words out of my response.
Yeah, this was one of the few times in my life I've seen Jason be speechless. He was like, what
I just
alternate reality am I in here?
I'm staring blankly at my salad when I heard this, and I slightly turned my head in that slow, like, there's that line in Family Guy where Brian says something like upside down face, and Stewie just goes, and just turns his head with his mouth agape, just like, yeah, that's exactly what I was doing to Coach Gable. So, okay. What was your favorite episode of the Short Time Wrestling podcast?
My favorite episode was really Lauren Burrows, because I felt like I could relate to her. Not that you're a wrestler, but you do go on a lot of wrestling trips. And so just hearing her talk about how she supported Jordan and how hard it was for her to have him travel when they have two little kids who have similar ages as ours, I really enjoyed that and could really relate to her.
What was your coworker's favorite episode of the Short Time Wrestling podcast?
Shut up. We're not talking about that.
What, the Mario Lopez episode? You don't want to talk about that one?
No.
Okay. Real question. In what year did I start Matt Talk Online?
1999.
1997.
Ooh, I forget. You're a little older than I am.
6 months. What is your version of how our daughters got their middle names? Let's start with Lucy, who is Lucy London. I
would say, basically, I just tell people my husband covers wrestling for a living. He's a journalist and sports broadcaster. He's been, fortunate enough to cover the Olympics. The first cycle he was at was the London Olympics. London's my favorite city. It just made sense. And then when we knew we were going to have another girl right around the Olympics, we started with the middle name for her, and the rest just came from there.
See, my version, again, this is the 8-word version from Abby, the 800-word version from me. I've always started with, it's your favorite city. You spent a semester abroad in England. You spent time in London. We were in London together on a layover coming back from South Africa for a couple hours. And it wasn't just like sitting in the airport. We went gallivanting around, Soho.
I remember how hot it was.
Oh, so bad. I was so pissed that they didn't have any ice in the sodas.
Yeah, there's no ice anywhere.
This was like right by Buckingham. No, it was right by Big Ben and the big Ferris wheel. And it was like a McDonald's at like 7:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And it was so sticky. Well, plus we were on the plane for like 12 hours. Gross, but okay. The Rio one. So, and again, with Ruby, we started with, if it was a girl, it would have been Rio as a middle name. If it was a boy, there would have been no Olympic tie. Mm-hmm. We are not, at our ages, we're both 30. Well, I'm 37. She's 36.
Are you joking me? You don't tell people that.
Yes, we do.
A lady never divulges her age.
I realize that, but you didn't divulge it. I did. So, but we have to make, because people are going to be like, okay, are you going to have another one in Tokyo? No, Tammy Tokyo is not going to be.
Never say never.
We're going to end the show right now.
We make cute babies.
Yes, our kids are. Yeah. Okay, now this is getting awkward for me, and it's my show. All right. Name 2 of my favorite bars on the planet.
What's that dive one in Lancaster? I'm forgetting it for a minute. Help me out.
Brendy's.
Okay,
I'll give you the dive in Lancaster.
Okay.
You could be a little more specific, but that was generally the main one.
Yeah, Brendy's. And I mean, you like Jake's, local.
All of my listeners are so disappointed in you right now.
What am I missing?
The turf.
The turf. Well, I didn't say that because it burned down, I thought.
It was still one of my... It's still... You don't know if Brendy's burned down last week or not.
You're right. I don't.
Jake's isn't even Jake's anymore. It's Big Louie's.
True.
You never listen to me.
Yeah, I don't.
All right. So.
That's because you don't go to bars with me. You go to bars when you're traveling.
Yeah, I really don't.
We go to nice restaurants.
Yes. Like Ingredients, which is where our first date was. Awesome food if you're ever in White Bear Lake. Okay. This is the degree of my nerdery with my little nerdy little database. What is on the inside of the window blind in my office?
All of the different colleges and the different divisions that they belong to, so that you can quickly look up if Elmhurst is in the same one as College. Okay,
bonus points for naming 2 Division 3 schools. And it's extra bonus point for saying co-college because Nathan Shai will appreciate that. So what I have is I have all the Division I schools and mascots and coaches and all that stuff memorized. But sometimes I need a little refresher on what conferences and regions certain Division II and III and NAIA schools are in. I know where the schools are typically. I know the mascots typically. Most of the coaches I got, but sometimes when I'm doing the standings, I don't know is Midland in the same conference as York or Bethany? It's one of those things for regional. So yes, I have that on the inside of the window blind. Okay. There are 2 former college wrestlers on the board of directors for the Speakeasy. Name the one who didn't go to Old Dominion.
Jake Clark.
Close.
The other Jake.
Jake Herbert. Yes.
There's too many Jakes, right?
Yes, there are. Okay, who wrote the official Speakeasy theme song?
Charlie Bush.
That will be played at the end of this episode, just in case you're wondering.
Yeah, never forgiving him for that.
Right. Jake Herbert also sings it.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Speakeasy, and how excited are you to get it built?
The Speakeasy is part of our unfinished basement being turned into Jason's studio / a speakeasy of sorts where he can hang out with his man friends since we have a house of girls around here.
3 of them.
And I'm excited for it to be done so that he can get all of his wrestling junk out of our guest bedroom and we can have a nice place for people to stay.
This is not making this up when I say this is the next question. What's the coolest bit of wrestling memorabilia you think I own? Oh, excuse me. Wrestling junk.
Oh, excuse me. Yes. Memorabilia. I would say, your bobbleheads are cool, right? Because they're people. You have a Wheaties box. The only weird thing about that is I think there's actual cereal in it.
There's 2 of them, and yes, they both have cereal in them.
So that's a little
Who's on the cover?
Weird.
Who's on the Wheaties boxes?
Well, Kale, of course, right? Do they still do athletes on Wheaties boxes?
I don't know. I don't know when the last time I bought a box of Wheaties was.
We should have checked that out after the Olympics. I actually have no idea.
I don't eat cereal, so
I'll Google it later. So yeah, I would say the bobbleheads or the Wheaties box are actually probably my favorites. And of course your awards. Duh.
Okay. How about the nerdery that is the boxes and boxes of wrestling magazines that just got dropped off at our house one day?
Yeah, that's a lot. That's why you need to have your own space. That banner you have of the wrestlers from the 80s. It's like Hammer and Chisel and Iceman or whatever.
It's not from the 80s. That's actually from 2003. That's Real Pro Wrestling.
Excuse me. It looks like the 80s.
The Real Pro
Maybe
Wrestling
that's why they're
banner.
not around.
Yeah, the Real Pro Wrestling banner.
That's cool. Like Lucy likes to look at those and be like, hey, who's that guy?
Yeah, the Pennsylvania Hammer, the Iowa Stalkers, the California Claw. That was just... I think Brian Keck tore up a California Claw thing once. All right, this is kind of a oddball question, but who has the best wrestling mustache in the state of Minnesota? 3 possible options here. I'm going to give you some hints on this one.
Yeah, somebody named Joe. Joe something?
Joe Mama? No.
Oh my word. The 90s called. They want their Joe back.
Yeah. Okay, so hints are Greco-Roman wrestler.
Yeah, I know. I can picture him. Aunt Basic?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry.
Second hint. Recently got fired.
Oh. J-Rob?
Yeah. And third, a board member and a member of the board of directors for the Speakeasy and our insurance man.
Mike Bush.
Mike Bush, okay.
So you failed to mention that your father-in-law has had a mustache on and off all of his adult life, although he's not a wrestler. But he did, right? Didn't he wrestle for a little while?
You said he wrestled like for a year in high school.
Yeah. So, you got to give props to Harv.
Okay, so when I met this man, you got to realize what type of, I guess, what's the word I would be looking for? Initiation to this family.
It's called meeting your girlfriend's parents.
Okay, fairly religious upbringing. You went to Bethel, you know, active in the whole the church thing, and then I get invited on like date 4 to Easter, which is like a bigger deal than Christmas. Okay, it's like, oh, Easter, and then not only do I don't just meet them in the yard or anything. It's like, oh, we're meeting at church. Okay. Nice wow. Mr. Loss.
Wait, you forgot to tell them when we pulled into the church.
Okay, that was before
lot.
that. No, that was the house. That wasn't the church part.
No. This is what happened.
I was a little bit nervous.
Can you stop talking for a sec?
My show.
We pulled into the church parking lot, and Jason was so nervous. He basically is hyperventilating. I don't have any paper bags in my car, right? So he has to lean his seat back in the parking lot and take a few like deep breaths so that he can focus on meeting my family. People walking by are like,
no, they're not. You're making that up.
What's that chick doing in the car? Oh, there's somebody laying down. Should we be worried?
You're totally making that up. You're totally making that part of it up. You're doing this for dramatic effect. I know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. What's my favorite TV show?
Something inappropriate like South Park.
Something inappropriate would have worked.
Yeah.
Which show have you started watching that you'd never watched before we got married because of me?
Family Guy.
Aha. Okay. Trying to think of any other wrestling questions. I mean, those were all of my questions, but has anything popped into your head that we need to tell the people that has a wrestling tie? Like the time at, the first trip I really took her on was, she just kind of went to Division IIIs in lacrosse while working. Mm-hmm. You were still at Deloitte, right?
A consulting company.
Whatever. Yes. You don't work there anymore. They sponsor the Olympics. They're kind of
okay. All right.
Yeah. So at the consulting company, I would edit this, but I don't feel like it. So
thanks.
Yeah. I'll bleep out, Brooks Wheelan. Never mind. So we're sitting there, and I'm doing the broadcast for NCAA.com, and I'm getting texts throughout like, white is not a good color for singlets. And like, wow, that singlet is really. I mean, it's like, I love you guys at Wabash, but the candy cane singlets were really awful. Yeah, the red ones were really good, but the candy canes, the one Greg Rhodes was wearing, she doesn't know who I'm talking about. But I just remember that was the year he was wrestling, and it was like a pinstripe red and white. I'm like, and then I text her that Kevin Donahue is wrestling for Cornell College in I think the 5th place match. And it says, I've known this kid since he was like 7. I know his dad really well. And right at that moment, he gets hit in the head, and they're going through the concussion protocol. And she's like, our kids are never wrestling. So
that is true.
Those are both at the same tournament.
I was like, I knew almost nothing about wrestling, right? As we talked about in the beginning. So going to an actual wrestling match and being able to watch it and focus on it in a sport I knew nothing about, I was like amazed by how athletic these people are, how hard they work for those 3 periods. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Why? 1, why don't more people wrestle? 2, why don't more girls come to matches? Because these bodies are amazing. And 3,
the ones on the mat, not the ones on the press row. I think I do okay, but they're not checking out. Hey, check out the sports writer right here. It's seat A3.
And 3, just like amazed by their athletic ability, which I just knew, again, almost nothing about. So that's what you exposed me to. That and like dumpy hotel rooms, right? I remember.
I will sleep in any place. Like I will sleep at the Brookstone Inn, which isn't like the Brookstone in the mall. This is like Keys. I will sleep at a Motel 6 or a hotel, Super 8. No. So my wife has actually allowed me to move up a little bit. So now my base price is no longer $59.99 a night. It's probably closer to $89. So I'm gradually moving up to Best Westerns and sleep ins and whatever's in Charles City, Iowa when I get snowed in on the way back from a Penn State Iowa duel.
Yes, because you remember that first trip. It wasn't even a key card, like
no, it was a key. It was an
like
actual
skeleton key that you had to have in the door. That's that's what I got myself into. And again, this was after we'd already fallen in love, so I was doomed.
Yeah.
I didn't know all of this.
Doomed. So she has now come with me to La Crosse, Wisconsin. She's been to Fargo once. She has been to the Turf.
Yep, I stayed in the Fargo dorms. It was hot. That's about all you can say about that, and not in a good way hot, like just temperature hot.
Yeah. Single bed. That's what I gotta say.
2 single beds.
Just like her honeymoon.
In the Amish country.
We can't leave him hanging on that. We got to explain that story because this was I missed the Beat the Streets, the battle on the boat. We got married in May. And we did our honeymoon. I still had a house in Lancaster, Pennsylvania when I worked for the NWCA. I had bought a house in December and moved to Minnesota in August of 2008. This was 2 years later. I still hadn't sold the place. Anyway, so we go on our honeymoon to Aruba.
It was amazing.
It was great. Last day, we get strep throat. Or we get sick our last day. Not sure what it was. Lost my wedding ring for about 2 minutes before a diver went down and found it off the bottom. Had the best like tour guide driver ever if you ever go to Aruba, don't take like the tour company that like owns the island. Find like the little, like, I think it was ABC tours or something. Yeah, it was like that guy was nuts. We didn't go the nice, easy way. We were going over rocks and stuff. Well, anyway, we're in Aruba. And then, so the last couple days, we go back to Pennsylvania, and the only hotels that were close enough to the city that weren't, and there were places built there now, but was out in Strasbourg, which is Amish country, and it was 2 like single beds. It was the only rooms they had available. So we went to a Minute Clinic in Philadelphia after we got off the plane. We got strep throat on our honeymoon, and then we end up sleeping in 2 single beds in an Amish hotel in Strasbourg, Pennsylvania, while getting rid of the most disgusting stuff in my house to sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we still had fun, right? I have only good memories of that.
Yeah, we were on antibiotics, and I took you to Brendy's.
Oh, yeah, the dive bar.
And we hung out with Catulo and Tammy and Casey and some of the F&M crew that were over there at the much better place. I can't remember, the Annie Bailey's, I think. Yeah, I think it was Annie Bailey's. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't know that. Mm-mm. But yeah, so that's how we have to explain the single bed situation.
Yeah. So what you didn't ask me is what I like about your job and what I don't like about your job.
I was trying to avoid the whole what you don't like about it, but you can say more than 8 words here.
Okay. So we'll start with a negative. What I don't like about your job, of course, is it takes you away from the family, right? I mean, we moved to Minnesota for many reasons. One of them is so you could be closer to so much of the action, but that means more day trips and you are gone a lot traveling. So that's what I don't like about your job. But what I like about your job is how happy it makes you, right? Not everybody can be passionate about their job and really find the best fit for them. And you, I feel like, really have done that. You've married your love of wrestling, your love of people and talking. Good Lord, everybody knows you love to talk. And, podcasting and nerdery and just meeting people of a different background.
Nerdery, I don't think is a word, but I think we've both made it one.
Okay.
Other than that, and we'll go back to the nerdery with our nerd friends. That was from Tommy Boy. Anyway. More about talking about me? No, just kidding.
So you've really married all of those things together, which I think is awesome, which is why I support you and why I'm more than happy to be a guest on your podcast whenever you need me.
Overtime bonus questions. How many wrestling t-shirts do I own now?
Okay. I mean, it's got to be at least 400.
How many wrestling t-shirts did we donate to Goodwill before we moved to Colorado?
At least 250. I mean,
how quickly did I replenish them?
It took, I don't know, a week or two of people finding out you got rid of my t-shirt. What? I'll send you a new one.
I always keep at least one of one school too.
No, but no lie, you guys. Like, we get a package in the mail at least every week of a t-shirt of somebody he knows or saw or had a conversation with on Facebook or Messenger or text, and they're just like, oh, hey, I got some new gear. I'd like you to sport it.
Which I do.
Yeah, you do. And I kind of do too sometimes, so can't lie.
Oh, how about the trip that you're on a work trip and we're Skyping and I look as, oh, nice shirt. And she's typed one of my Central Missouri wrestling shirts. Mm-hmm. What am I wearing? The other Central Missouri wrestling shirt. So Justin Ensign, you did a good job. Now, who also gets shout outs? Chris Ayers at Princeton, because you are from Princeton. They're the Tigers, Princeton University. We get a package in the mail. Sean Gray, Chris Ayers. I know Sean way back. Joe Dubuque, etc. Thing comes in the mail. This was a week I got nothing but orange stuff. I got a shirt from Blue Chip. It was from Campbell. And then I think they came the same day. And then the Princeton gear comes in. These awesome sweatpants, I never got a chance to put them on. They were hers. They're amazing. But the sweatshirts and the t-shirts, yeah. So Sacred Heart, really cool sweatshirt. Mm-hmm. Came in, and she also likes the fact that wrestling shirts that don't just say wrestling on them, like the spinning the St. Louis thing with the bicyclist coach. That you're like, oh, that's a really cool shirt. I like that. It's like wrestling shirts, and then how about the 100 compound wrestling shirts that are under the under the table in the office too. Oh, well, your Mad Talk shirts. Yeah. Yep. If I ever need a t-shirt, there's one I can borrow at any given moment. And shout out to Cliff, because they're that super awesome fabric and the design and all that stuff, right? Yeah, everybody loves them. They look great and they feel great. All right, I think the baby just coughed, so might be where... I guess that's my cue. That's, yeah. Actually, well, if it's a false alarm, we're going to go watch Survivor and eat some ice cream. Don't really have any pitches other than if you want to contribute to this network so my darling wife can have something to do while she puts up with me during wrestling season, you can go to matttalkonline.com/join the team, because behind every, how's that saying go? Behind every good man's a good woman. Behind every successful man, I think, is a good woman. Or you could just outpunt your coverage like I did. I married up, folks. You can hear it. Thank you, my love, for... Anytime, my dear. It only took you 2 years to get on the show. Mm-hmm. Well, I've been begging for 2 years, so I guess it just took you not having any content to finally let me on. Just kidding. Wow. You can edit that out. I'm not going to, because I said I wasn't going to. I'm just going to interject some Royce Alger voicemails. Okay. Sounds good. Love you. Thank you. Love you too. That's going to make some of the people puke at the end of the show. You know that, right? Oh my God. Brian said he loved this chick on the radio. That's all I got. It's not a radio. It's a podcast. Thank you. She's learning, folks. She's learning. Daily wrestling news at matttalkonline.com/news. Check out the scoreboards. The only place in the country you've got college wrestling standings, including the most recent edition. Women's college standings are in there now. The NAI, I'm going to be adding the junior colleges once I figure out what regions and districts these guys are in. And of course, again, the contribution, because I can tell you this, every time I get a contribution from a listener, this woman does backflips and celebrates it. I cannot do a backflip. Figuratively. Okay. It really, it makes her more excited that I get contributions from fans than me, because it kind of puts a little bit of this yeah, okay, this is actually something people enjoy. So It's not just me talking in my basement like a nerdery that it is. Right. No, we appreciate the support for sure. Now, do you know the sign off for the show? No. Thank you for listening, because we know you've always got time. Oh, yeah. For short time. We're sitting at my living room table, my dining room table, actually, because we don't actually have a living room. Well, it's actually a living room, but it's a great room. It's kind of a den. It's sunken. And my guest today is already laughing. Stop.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.